So, Danny, the last time we talked,
Mm.
uh, you didn't. We didn't get a chance to talk about things because we were talking to another guy. So,
Mhm.
let's give you a moment.
Okay.
I'd really like to hear what you have to say because I've seen some of your remarks.
Cool, cool, great. I want to talk about sharing the Dhamma.
Okay.
You've had a number of newcomers um, from this kind of Q&A thing that I put out on Reddit, on the Stream Entry Reddit,
Mm-hmm.
and it was
Ah, that's you.
that's me. Yeah, you've seen it too.
I've seen the Q&A, yeah.
I really am a celebrity.
More so than you know.
You think so?
Yes, Pablo just told me, because he's here now, he was actually doing volunteer work at the big retreat over at Wat Suan Mok.
Right.
And he said that he knew that he met two students at that retreat
Hmm.
that know about you and I already.
Huh.
And
Interesting.
that they went to Wat Suan Mok because of you. So it's actually getting around. I'm quite surprised.
Yeah,
Not
wonderful.
so much. I mean, let us say flattered, but not surprised.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because there's so much verifiable truth in the Dhamma that it's what one can validate it in one's own experience, which is exactly the experience that I had when we first started speaking. And so now I'm just regurgitating, and well, it feels great. And so what I'm interested in is you've encouraged me to check out groups here in Bristol with the view to perhaps starting a group of my own.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what kind of things might I be able to do on the internet to continue to share the Dharma? And the reason that this is coming up for me is we've spoken about time structuring as well, right?
Yes.
And when I think now about continuing plans to market myself as a drum teacher, I'm just not as interested in that as I am in sharing the Dharma. I feel like the Dharma is more valuable. I think teaching the drums is great, and I see that people get value from that, but I feel that the Dharma is more valuable knowledge. And so when I'm faced with a choice about what to do with my time, I feel more excited about sharing the Dharma.
Okay. I like that, other than the word excited.
Okay.
If you want to get excited, play the drums. If you want to be happy, play the drama.
Oh, so now I'm thinking about those 4 points on the grid that the breathing guy laid out in his talk. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Bhikkhu Buddhadasa also talks about it, and he talks about it in the book called Happiness and Hunger,
Hmm.
where he draws the distinction between happiness and excitement.
Hmm.
Now, excitement is also like anticipation.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
really like the word anticipation because you can hear the way I say it. I've seen Rocky Horror movie,
I have.
Rocky Horror Picture Show. You know that one?
I know of it.
Okay, right. That uh, I forget all of the names, but I do remember the guy was saying anticipation.
And of course, that word has the future built right into it, right?
Yes, exactly. A lot of onomatopoeia right there. So, the point is possibly best done with this little story. Imagine that you were in a desert and it was really hot and you were out of water and you're stumbling around and it's really, really, really bad. I mean, it's a bad situation. And you go over one sand dune after another, and then you go over the next one, and all of a sudden there's an actual real, not a mirage, oasis with real camels and real trees. and maybe even real belly dancers and certainly real camels. So, what are you going to do? You're going to get up and you're going to go down there, possibly even run with anticipation for getting to the water. And then you finally make it to the water. And now you're drinking, and you've got all the water, and you drink and you drink and you drink until you say, oh, okay, enough, and you turn over and you're laying there completely satisfied with having drank. Which one of those two states of happiness? The running down the hill in anticipation of drinking the water, or actually having drank the water?
Well, I experience both every day.
All right, so the real happiness is in the satisfaction of having gotten it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's another way of looking at this, and that is and this actually goes to the title of the book, of hunger and happiness. That most people see that happiness is the, let us say, the process of the elimination of the desire or the hunger. But there's another kind of happiness, and that is the kind of happiness that's completely free from hunger.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, the kind of satisfaction or the happiness that we get that we've gotten without having to go through the getting process,
Mm-hmm.
the anticipation, or the excitement, or the fulfillment of the hunger. So one kind of happiness is a fulfillment of hunger and all the processes that we go through to get that hunger in the process of being fulfilled, all to the point of it being fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And now contrast that to being in a state of happiness that doesn't want or need anything, that it's satisfying right like it is, rather than as, let us say, a remedy to a disease.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where Buddhadasa is talking about it. So when you picked up on that, or when you use that word excitement, I jumped on it because excitement is the anticipation of the satisfaction rather than the actual satisfaction itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you want to do is to work on the internet already fully satisfied, that you like what you're doing rather than expecting something out of it.
Sure.
You got that? Do
Sure.
you see that distinction, Frederic?
Absolutely.
Frederic?
That's me.
Yeah. Do you understand that distinction?
I do. I
Yes.
know that lately I was thinking mostly, well, because we're talking about food, that there seems to be a difference between food that is, let's say, tasty and food that is stimulating.
Mm.
And that the stimulation usually it's not so good.
Nourishing.
For example, yeah, that is very stimulating, but in fact it's quite empty, stuff like this. But yeah,
Oh, like junk foods. Yes.
yes,
I
for
understand
example.
what you're talking about. Right. And that in fact, the food manufacturers make more money and would prefer to sell you those empty foods because uh, but people want to buy them because of that confusion between satisfaction and excitement.
Yeah.
These foods are exciting, okay? Like Coca-Cola, potato chips, Pringles, Kit Kat bars. I know them. I've got a whole house full of them.
Yeah, yeah, and that in fact, when you pay really attention to it, it's very basic tasty. You know, it's really like high sugar or high fat, and it's like yeah, but in fact, if I pay attention to that, I don't like that. So it's yeah, it's stimulating, but it's not the stuff.
All right. So now let's take that and put a little Buddhist twist on it and recognize that some thoughts are like that. Just like the food, okay? Exactly. Some thoughts are actually quite delicious and satisfying, and other thoughts are exciting or keeps us jacked up, etc., like that. And so, in fact, Pablo and I were in a long conversation about that today. We were talking about it in a different frame of reference, but we're talking about it from his perspective because he's been in the Dhamma for a long time, and now he's looking at what kind of thoughts are wholesome as opposed to what thoughts are not wholesome. But he was coming from a place that was putting all thoughts as unwholesome. No, some thoughts are actually quite wholesome, especially if the thoughts are thoughts about the Dhamma, the thoughts about generosity, the thoughts about gratitude, thoughts of reduction and elimination of suffering, etc., are all very wholesome thoughts. They're things that are worthy of paying attention to. Even the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Noble Path, in short, almost everything about the Dhamma or the Buddha is worth thinking about. Little Susie, I'm not sure. That new Mercedes that I want, I know for sure that one's not worth thinking about. That one's going to cost me $75,000 in damages just for thought. The collision is in the mind. I don't have to wreck the car. I'm going to wreck my mind over that car. So these are the kind of thoughts then that are unwholesome. But in the very beginning, it's kind of hard for students to see that. And so what we're looking at then is that, well, what we're doing here is we're developing the skills.
Yeah.
Rather than applying the skills. In Pablo's case, he's applying the skills because he's already been developing this skill of sati. So now he has a choice about what thoughts he's going to have. Most beginners, we don't. We don't have thoughts choices about what we think. The mind just goes right off. So the original part of the training then is to recognize when the mind is wandering away so we can bring it back to a state where we can make it worth using. That we can bring it to a state to where we can apply it to something and keep it focused there. That's what we call, in fact, is normally known as first jhana, to be free from the hindrances, and it's actually quite a pleasurable state to be in. But it's going to take some training to get into that state. So if the state itself is free from hindrances, and it's very pleasurable, partly because it's just free from hindrances, that's pleasure enough. But also it has successes built into it because the mind is now free from hindrances. That's an accomplishment. So being free from these hindrances has success and seclusion built in as part of the joy that's there. But that joy still needs to be developed also as a skill. And that the way that we're going to develop it is through this quality of success, to see that there is success there. So that as we catch the mind wandering away from the breath, we say, aha, I caught you. There you are. I know it. And see, I'm already changing the way I feel. I'm gladdening the mind. And by doing so, I'm actually, through the mind, changing the Vedana, the way that I feel, and I'm giving the body some pleasure. Intentionally so, as a skill development. We start working with the anapanasati in these ways. In fact, step number 7, I think it is pleasure. Step number 10 for sure is gladdening the mind. And so you can see that by gladdening the mind, you're giving the body or the feelings some pleasure. So you're developing that as a skill. That's a very, very valuable skill to have. So after you develop the skill of sati and right effort, and that right effort always has that joy built into it, one of the it's not really so much of a side benefit as it is just wrapped up right into the package, and that is one's right attitude. Because normally human beings have the attitude of being a victim, the attitude of being a loser, the attitude of needing something, or basically wanting things. And we already know the Buddha has been very clear that one of the definitions of suffering is wanting things we don't have. So if you want something, you're a victim. What are you a victim of? You're a victim of two things. One, you're a victim of that thing which you want, and two, you're a victim of someone who's got it. And if he's a store merchant, he's going to victimize you when he sells it to you. But we're going to change that attitude. That's the old attitude that we were raised from childhood. We were children and we were raised in a position of being a victim. I mean, you kind of remember it. I've got a kid here and I know that she's going through with. Kids are small people. They're not big. They can't read, they can't write, they can't fix food, they can't even dress themselves, they can't button, they can't tie shoes. You remember, I think, like how hard it was. And so we had to have a big adult to do so many things for us, so we start off dependent. We start off in victim's position. We need help. We do it ourselves. And that mental attitude is trained into us as children.
Right.
We're victims. And we remain victims our whole life until you finally make the choice that I'm going to come out of my victimhood and I'm going to be a lion. And that's the training of right attitude. To come out of I hurt into roar. Big difference. Right? I just heard it again. that was a motorbike roar. I could hear it. So, it's a training that we need to go through. The training is to change our attitude from, oh, there the mind goes again. Oh, wow, monkey mind, this meditation stuff is so hard. You probably both have said that very same thing to yourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Into the change of, aha, I caught you. That's the major change. Aha, I caught you, because that's a major change in your attitude. To change that attitude from being a loser to being a victim of one's own mind, which is what you've been your whole life, into being the champion of one's own mind. To take control, to think the kinds of thoughts that you want to think. After you have the ability to throw out every thought, then you'll learn the skill of figuring out which thoughts are worthy of having so that you can put them in. But if you think that you can figure out what are the right thoughts to have, the worthy thoughts, and try to throw them into the mix and expect anything to happen, sorry. You're just like, if your mind is a sewer, then throwing a really good lunch into the sewer is not going to improve that lunch. We need to clean things out first. And then we can put the right kind of thoughts in there. So this is the practice of the Buddha that we need to really practice on getting the mind cleaned out. Not 100% all the time, just right now. A lot of students have the idea that, oh, this is off into the future. When I give you instructions, when the mind wanders away, clean it out. They say, oh, if I clean it really good, it'll stay clean. No, no, you got to keep cleaning and keep cleaning and keep cleaning and keep cleaning, and eventually it will settle down. And one of the major ways that we need to let that stuff settle down is by not dwelling in the past. Always stay in this present moment. And
Mm-hmm.
this is more for Frederic than it is for Danny, because Danny already knows quite a lot about being here now. But being in this present moment means that we're not in the past. And the past is mainly where we uh, store all of our suffering. We're storing it as memories. And if we remember it, we'll start hurting again. And so the best thing to do is to stay out of the past as much as possible. But then we can go and say, well, wait a minute. If I think of something that happened last week and I recognize that it actually is broken and I need to fix it. Now, what I've done is I've given myself work to do, a job to do, and I'm planning on the future. Here's a really good example of that. I have a fight with my girlfriend, just an argument, not a real fight. She's still no blood. Have an argument with my girlfriend, and now it's time to meditate. And I sit down and I start meditating. And while I'm meditating, or quote, quote, in air quotes, meditating, I'm having a rehash of that conversation that I had with my girlfriend. And while I'm having a rehash of that girlfriend, I say, you know something, I should have told her this, that, and the other thing. I should have said this, and I didn't. And so now I'm going to keep track of next time I see her, I'm going to tell her this. Because I know if I tell her this, she'll say that, and then I can say, aha, I got you. And so now we're planning on the future. And now we've wasted our meditation time. The bell goes off. We've got nothing out of our meditation except some throwback to give to our girlfriend. We give her that throwback, and she does not answer the way we expected her to answer. She answers some other way. We get angry and we just stomp off and say, well, now I have to go back and meditate again because I got to think of something new to tell her. And we're wasting our whole lives doing that. The better thing to do is when we recognize that I'm thinking about my girlfriend in that argument that we had, I can say, well, right now she's not here and I do not need to argue with her. That's suffering. Thinking about that argument hurts right now. Let's not think about it. But we don't even have to go through that little dialogue. I don't have to say that one sentence. We can stay and say, aha, I caught you. And so this is a major quality that we have to do this over and over again, Frederic. So when you told me at the beginning about it, I've got to really go into this because there's a whole different way of looking at this. That this meditation time is a time for training. It's a time to come out of that stuff that's in the mind, to give ourselves a break, to give ourselves a rest, to empty that stuff out, and more specifically, to put something wholesome, useful, valuable, and constructive in the mind, rather than letting it go wherever it used to go. All right? Now, good, valuable, hostful, useful, all of that kind of stuff, do I have a list for you? Actually, the Buddha's got a list. It's got 4 items on the list. This is suffering. This is the cause of suffering. This is the end of suffering. This is the path. All right? Those 4 things, those are worthy of paying attention to. The 4 Noble Truths. But in fact, when you see the mind has wandered away, you can say, aha, that's suffering. And this is the cause of suffering, is the hindrances themselves. And when you say, aha, I've caught you, that's actually the end of suffering. So you're practicing the 4 Noble Truths right here, as well as practicing 4 of the path factors right here with that. Aha, I caught you. Now, Goenka has the phrase, Never mind, start again. But he's Indian. They've already got a little bit of joy built in. Us Westerners, we're misery guts, believe me. We're all just so miserable. And so we have to have that little extra juice in it. So never mind, start again sounds kind of bland for us, but aha, I caught you. Now that's got some weight to it. So aha, I caught you means I'm grabbing that stuff and throwing it out of the mind. You're uninvited guest. Now later on in your practice, Frederic, what we will have to do is learning how to be on guard all throughout the day. But for right now in the beginning, the thing to do is to make sure that when you're getting ready to sit down to meditation, that you're doing it with the right intention, the strong right intention that I'm not going to let the mind wander away. I'm going to keep the mind focused on the breathing. I'm going to do that long breath for 3, 4, 5 breaths, and then I'm going to let the breath go back naturally. Now, in that long breath, we want to be able to really experience the body, experience the belly, experience the chest. Actually, if you take a really deep breath, you can actually feel the shoulders rise. So, just sitting there. But you can also experience the back. You can experience around all of this area. You can actually feel all of that stuff as you're taking a really long, deep breath. But when you settle down to the short breath, you don't see that stuff so much.
Is that what is meant with in the Anapanasati Sutta with the experiencing the whole body?
Exactly. That's step 3 I just gave you. And the question is it experience the whole body or merely the whole body of breath? The whole body of breath would be like from nose range, eye range, all the way down to the abdomen, to where the whole body would also work with the hands, work with all of the face, and even work with the legs. And we do that not so much in the sitting meditation, but we start to work with that in the when we start getting off the cushion. That's when we start dealing with our hands. But for in the beginning, the right thing to do is to take a particular posture with your hands and keep it there. Take a particular posture with your legs and keep it there unless they start to hurt. If they hurt, then it's okay to stand up and let the feelings subside from the legs. You might even want to go so far as to take a short walk of walking meditation and then come back and sit down. Because unlike Goenka actually wants the students to deal with pain, and so he gives them practices that's going to bring up bodily pain so that they can deal with it.
Yeah, I remember that.
He's a masochist.
that was a nice time.
But Bhikkhu Buddhadasa is of the opinion, no, there's no reason to give the body extra. That's not the right way to practice it. In fact, beginning students who do the Goenka method generally take a long time before they do a second retreat. But if you practice more of the Achan Po, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, Watso and Mok style, then when the body starts to pain, move your posture so that you can come out of the pain. Because what we're doing here is we're not training you to sit in pain. We're training you to come out of pain. So it makes no sense for a beginning student for the teacher to intentionally put them in pain knowing they do not have the tools to deal with it. So for your sitting practice, make sure that you're comfortable, but you maintain stillness as best you can so that you're paying all your best attention to make sure that if the mind wanders away, you can catch it and bring it back. And so you use the body of the breath, you can feel the body, and every time that you do this, it will automatically, as part of the practice, bring you back into the present moment. as I've heard before, you cannot watch last year's breath. You cannot watch next month's breath. The only breath you could watch is the one you're having right here, right now. And so that grounds us right into the present moment just by coming out of whatever we were thinking about and coming to the breath. So you keep doing these four things over and over and over again. What are the four things? Right view. I will come out of the hindrances and come to the present moment. That's number one. Number two, I will remember to do so. Whenever the mind wanders away, I'll remember it and I'll come back. The third one is the right effort. I've got to do this easily and gently. This is not forced, because if I force myself, I'm just adding suffering, not subtracting it. So it's got to be just the right balance. What is the balance? Enough so that we come out of hindrances, but no more than that. And then the fourth one is right attitude. The right attitude, which is actually the second item on the Eightfold Noble Path. And that is the attitude of a lion, the attitude of a winner, the attitude of, I can do this. And very soon, as Danny will tell you about, there comes a point in time when you do recognize, I can do this. I can do this. That's the winner's attitude, as opposed to this is hard, which is the loser's attitude. The winner's attitude is, I can do this. Now, what we're talking about is, in fact, the way that the sutta says it, is no matter how obstructed the mind is, the student knows that he can clean it out. I can do this. I can clean the mind out and come back to this present moment to see things the way they are right here, right now. Danny is smiling because he knows that we've been through that. He's got it. He knows that he can clean his mind out. But that's a kind of a, not a goal, just a new way of understanding. Just a new way of understanding that you can do this practice. You can, no matter how much the mind wanders away, or how often, or that, let us say, going back to the example of having the fight with a girlfriend, sometimes those kind of thoughts get really stuck in there in the sense that they're big, powerful, strong, overwhelming. Another kind of thought that would be like that would be, my mom just died a year ago. She just died a year ago. So when I say just died a year ago, that means that the mind is still having that death fresh, so that thoughts about mom being dead come up still too often. So we can make then mom, and let us call her dead mom, that whenever any thoughts of dead mom come up, we can say, nope, out. I know you're a powerful thought. I know that you keep invading my mind, but I've got a strong mind now, and I can throw you out, dead mom, out. The same thing with arguing girlfriend. Arguing girlfriends can get really stuck in a guy's mind. And so what? We say, never mind, I don't care how strong, how stuck that gets in the mind, how often that argument keeps returning. Every time it does, I can catch it and I can throw it right back out. That's the right attitude to have, that no matter how obstructed, even if I've got both an angry girlfriend and a dead mom, I can still throw them both out and come to this present moment. I've got that kind of strength of mind. That's the first knowledge. The Buddha calls that the first knowledge, that is supramundane. It is a factor of the path, and it is not shared by ordinary people. Why? Well, ordinary people, they still expect that they need help. Look at how many different things we have in our language for that. Like, the leopard can't change his spots, or the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree.
Can't teach an old dog new tricks.
It takes an old dog new tricks. How about boys will be boys? Old boys clubs, all of that kind of stuff means that once a person after a certain age doesn't change. And that's a lie, because everybody all through their whole lives is constantly changing. They're just not watching it. I've been watching it over the years, and boy, have I got how to say it? Boy, have I got a kick out of watching this old body get even older. But you got to watch it. You got to see it. If people are not watching and don't see, then they'll come up with these ideas that I need help. Why? Because they had the idea I need help when they were toddlers. When they were first graders, I need help. I can't read on my own. I need the teacher to tell me these words. Later, I need help with math. I can't do math. I need the teacher's help to do math, etc. So the whole life is set up around us being victims. And most people stay victims their whole lives. No matter what station or what job or anything that they have, even CEOs, in fact, big CEOs in charge of big companies are victims. What are they victims of? They don't have enough money. They've got a board of directors that are hounding them. They've got laws, rules, regulations. They've got to pay taxes. What a miserable life it is to be the CEO. I mean, you got to pay them at least $100 million a year. Otherwise, they'll just drop dead out of pure dukkha. Or at least that's what he thinks. But I've got even a better example, and I don't even have to give too much information about it, and that's Donald Trump. He is a professional victim. And he's been playing that victim's card his whole life, and now he's a victim of the Democrats.
And the Republicans.
And the Republicans, right. He's even a victim of some of the Republicans, exactly. And so you can see how that works. That once we start off in the path of being a victim, we're going to remain a victim our whole lives until we make a big stand, a big change, an attitude change. I will stop being a victim, even to my own mind. And I'm going to start living my life as a champion, as a lion, as a success. And I do that every time I think about it. Every time I can remember to throw the crap out of the mind and come back to this present moment, take a deep breath and a good chuckle. Ha ha ha, I caught you. Ha 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 ha. This is the way that we have that attitude. If you keep with that attitude over and over and over and over again, it will become habit forming. So that joy becomes a skill, but it winds up being a good habit. Why? Because we practice that skill so many times that, in fact, when it becomes a habit, that's the definition of what we mean by right effort, becoming energetic, is because we have practiced right effort so many times, it becomes a habit now. We're used to it. And so effort actually kind of comes down. It gets easier and easier and easier because we throw out more and more and more and more, because we keep seeing more and more and more stuff that's worthy of being thrown out. Eventually we get to the point that we got very little left, and we become very happy with the fact that there's nothing much left to deal with. But we have to keep doing it like that, Frederic. This is, again, a review for Danny, but I see him smiling, so he knows, yeah, I know this, this is right, this is correct, this is exactly what I've been practicing, and I know that it's good. It's good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. A lot of meditation students, when they start, it's not so good for them, because they're not practicing correctly. But if you practice correctly, your meditation is going to be very good right from the very beginning. Right from the very beginning. What is that? Aha, I caught you. I can see you, mind. You've wandered away. Come on back. Let's enjoy the moment instead. And you can start practicing that more and more and more often. But the important place to start learning it is through that sitting meditation. That's why we do it. But we don't expect to have all of the results or all of the work to do just by sitting. That the sitting is actually kind of a practice. Danny plays the drums, and he knows exactly what I'm talking about, that when you're actually practicing, let us say, a new cadence or a knee beat or something like that, you don't want anybody listening to you. You want to be able to do that in private. When little kids are learning to play the piano, and tomorrow is the piano lesson, you got to go to the teacher, and I got to practice now because I haven't practiced all week long. One thing that I want my mom to not be there listening to me practice. I want this to be alone. I want to do it alone. I want to be away from everybody else. Once I learn the music, now I'm going to come out and boogie down. Now I'm going to come out and I'm going to perform and have a ball. But not until I learn. So this is why we do the training, the meditation session. I always see that as a practice session. We call it practice. And we want to be able to practice. What are we practicing? Sati. What are we practicing? Change of attitude. What are we practicing? The right effort that it takes to do this. And what are we practicing? The development of right view. That this is the right thing to do. Letting the mind wander away is not a right thing to do. Keeping the mind focused on the task at hand, that's the right attitude, or that's the right thing to do. So this is one's right view. So you can see how right view and right sati and right effort run a circle around each other, and then we add the fourth one, the right attitude, and that makes it a complete package. And this is all part of the Eightfold Noble Path. And it is extraordinarily valuable. And you will soon come to the time when you say, right, I got it. No matter how obstructed the mind is, I can catch that stuff, throw it out, and come back to this present moment happily. You keep doing that over and over and over again. And what happens is that you can see it happen. Every time that you can do that, you may have a little bit of doubt, but you are overcoming that doubt because you can see it. You're practicing it. You're doing it. And so over time, knowledge that I can do this starts to replace the doubt about whether I can do this or not. Because we've got so many positive reinforcements over and over and over again. And as I do, the doubt gets smaller and less important. And so that hindrance actually is fairly easy to deal with. Because why? Because we're practicing correctly and we're getting good knowledge to see that, in fact, I can clean out the mind. I can, whenever I see that it's clouded, when I see that I'm not in the present moment, I can, with right effort, bring it back and enjoy the moment. Good. I like that nod. That nod that was it. Okay. That's the nod of insight. I got it. I saw that. So this is the right way. So you go practice like this. This is not the first time that we've talked about it, but I think now you're beginning to understand.
Yep. Let's practice that.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
No, let's practice that.
Okay. Excellent.
At least it's gonna be fun.
Well, while Danny's here, he will tell you that what I have just said, he knows it to be true, but it was hard for him to understand to do that when I first told him. That it took several times.
Because it's so different to what we're told previously, to how we're trained as a toddler. So there's resistance.
Mm-hmm. There's that natural resistance that's based upon the old patterns, the old habits of the mind.
Yeah.
So the way that we were trained is the problem. We need a new training.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the laptop's great. It just needs a new copy of Windows. The problem is not the laptop. The hardware is great. The software sucks.
Yep.
And needs tweaking here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Needs to add some juice to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people in the West, they try to practice meditation without the juice. And because of that, they're not getting any joy out of removing the hindrances. And so they say, well, what's the use? At least it's a pleasant abiding to just sit here and let the mind wander away. And I'll count up, 30 minutes. Oh, another 30 minutes. I've got an hour. Oh, and now I sit an hour. Okay. If I get a long enough list, maybe 100 hours, then I'll get some benefit. Okay, Daddy? Doesn't work like that. The number of hours or how long you sit or how much practice you put in has nothing to do with it. I can sit in front of a piano and not learn anything, and I can sit there and fiddle on that keyboard for an hour and never learn a thing. The same thing is true with meditation. You can sit there for an hour and not get a thing accomplished other than figuring out what I'm going to tell that girlfriend that I'm arguing with. What do I have a few things to tell her now? But I've been living that kind of life my whole life, you know. That's the whole point of it is that we need to make our practice time count. We need to make it useful. We need to make sure that we're practicing correctly if we're going to practice. If our piano teacher, for instance, has given us this one song that we don't like, and she says, you learn that next week, and every time I bring that song out, I say, I don't like it, I'm going to fold that paper up, and I'm going to bring something out that I like to play. If I keep playing what I like to play, instead of playing what the assignment was, I'm not going to have a good piano lesson with my teacher, am I?
But you might still learn to play the piano.
But you might still learn to play the piano.
That's how I learned to play the drums.
Well, everybody's an exception to every rule.
Yeah, my teacher didn't like it very much.
But you did do what you were told to do sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, here we only have one rule, or not one rule, one note. This is a Johnny one note. A meditation is a one noter. Never mind, start again. Or in our case, aha, I caught you. That's the one note that we're going to play over and over and over and over and over again. That's the one we're going to practice playing. So in this case, there's only one song. So this is a song to practice. When the mind wanders away, you catch it. Aha, I caught you. And I'm going to happily throw whatever I was thinking about, in this case, dead mom or angry girlfriend, I won't throw those things out of the mind. And I'm going to come to the present moment with a deep breath and say, goodbye, mom. Goodbye, girlfriend. Don't need you anymore. This is a nice moment, a pleasant moment. Only those goodbyes don't have to be verbal or even mentally verbal. They don't have to be thoughts. We can just say, out. This is the way to learn to practice. Do you have any questions, Frederic?
Well, you know, when you were talking about that, I've understood that there is resistance to just, you know, like about those thoughts, like about mom, girlfriend, and all of that, to allow myself, you know, like right now I have a right to be, you know, happy. That there is some resistance even to that.
Well,
So
let me
that,
ask you that then. Do you have the right to be happy?
Well, I would say yes.
Okay.
But do I give myself that right? I don't know. I can feel the resistance here.
It was a trick question. And the trick part of the question is this concept of rights. What is a right? It's something that some authority figure gave you. Right? I mean, the Americans talk about rights. They even have it part of their Constitution called the Bill of Rights and other things like this. All right, so it was a trick question. Let me restate it better. Is it okay for you to be happy?
That's a much deeper question than it looks like. That's much, much deeper when you think about it.
I kind of work like that, right? I use a shovel and I take one dip at a time, and every time I talk, it gets deeper and deeper. Yes, that's right. Now we're looking at it. I tell you what, you already know the answer to that, but you know it in two different ways, and it gives you two different answers. The old way of looking at it, the way that you were raised, the way for the victim, the answer is no, it's not okay for you to be happy, because if it were okay for you to be happy, you would have been so happy you wouldn't have bothered calling me. But now let's look at it from another perspective, and that is the perspective of the Dhamma, the perspective of suffering and no suffering. In that regard, it's not a matter of existential or power or authorities or anything, but rather it is the fact that suffering is self-manufactured. You manufacture your own suffering, and if you start practicing correctly, you will start manufacturing your own joy, whether you've got a right to it or whether it's okay or not. Exactly. It's got nothing to do with the outside world, because both the right and the okayness has to do with the old way of looking at it. But now you're no longer a victim. Now you're the champion. You can make your own decision. And you can be happy simply because that's what you want to do. And it's not a matter of I want to be happy in the future, because I want to be happy in the future someday if I sit long enough on my cushion. That's suffering. But if I say, oh, I'll be happy right now because I can be right now, now that's the teaching of the Buddha. To be here, right now, feeling the way that you want to feel. But that's going to take a bit of skill. Skills that you have not been developing because you've been too busy developing the skills of maybe I should not have been happy because they don't like it when I'm happy.
Or if
Or
I'm gonna
maybe,
be happy, I have to do some suffering now.
right, suffer now, I'm right, pay later. Exactly.
Yeah, it's a payback.
Yeah,
There is a payment.
yeah.
And
And hey,
treatment.
that's only as woven into the fabric of society as the idea of work.
Uh-huh.
That's the whole point. From as soon as we're making memories, we're told you're going to go to school, then you're going to go to big school, then college,
Then you're going to go to a
university,
bigger school and get a bigger diploma and a bigger degree.
then you're going to get a
And when you
job,
get into
then a
get a
bigger job,
job,
then a bigger job, and maybe one day you can retire. But you might be dead by then.
but nowhere in that mix is happiness. Happiness is not there. So the society actually wants to keep you unhappy, because if they can keep you unhappy and in a state of desire, wanting happiness, for instance, then they can control you. I think I told Danny about the something that happened in Angkor Wat. That when the Buddhists came and take over, they lost all of their power because the people didn't care about keeping the power anymore. They used to go Amigami, you know, and all of that, and bow and scrape and do everything that they were told to do. And when Buddhism came in, they said,
and it was jade, right? The Thais came in and just
they just took it all, right? They just took the gold
stones.
and the jade and all of that, right? The Emerald Buddha they've got in Bangkok, right? They took it. Yeah. But the point that I'm making here in this regard is that you do not need it to be okay. It's merely that you can see. Every student that I've ever asked this question to always gives me the same answer. If you could feel the way that you wanted to feel, would you not choose happiness over sadness? If that's the case, if the students will always choose happy over sadness, then why is anybody ever sad? The answer is because they don't have any control over their feelings, which means that the feelings are on automatic pilot, which also is another way of saying that you're already in the habit of feeling a certain way. Now, Frederic, when we get into the discussion of Paticca Samuppada, which is quite deep, we'll see exactly how that operates. But for right now, you can understand that you feel bad because you're in the habit of feeling bad, and you have not been able to give yourself a choice about how you want to feel because you don't know how you feel. But when you start seeing how you feel and know for sure what it is, then you can make a choice about it. So a lot of our work with Anapanasati is actually going to be working with feelings, about how to recognize them, how to see them. And in the very beginning, we work with it in the sense of mental objects. The mental objects, the hindrances, the dead moms and the angry girlfriends and the car salesmen and the tax man and everybody that's out there. Whenever we think about them, that's suffering. And it's also based in the past, because while you're sitting right here on the floor, none of those people are here. That we're imagining them, we're bringing them up, we're conjuring them, and when we do, we wind up feeling bad. We've got a helicopter in the air. That's very unusual.
Yeah. Drug bust?
I doubt that. I didn't even know Thailand could afford a helicopter. But it certainly got everybody's attention. Even the dogs are saying, "What in the world?"
It's a big bird.
So anyway, back to this process of meditation. You've called me. You want to learn to meditate, etc., like that. So you've already got a huge dose of right view. You've already got a huge dose of that. Let's make sure that that is still in effect, that when you sit down for meditation, you're not going to waste your time. Because the right attitude, or actually the right view is, I'm going to get something out of this meditation. When the mind wanders away, I'm going to bring joy to my life. I'm going to say, wow, I caught you. Ha, I can see you. I am successful. And you do that over and over and over and over and over again, and it gets easier and easier and easier, and you become happier and happier and happier. And Danny would agree with me, even being an Englishman, he would agree with me, the Germans deserve happiness.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they've got a right to it. Maybe it's even okay for Germans to be happy. That one's getting deep. But when we take these labels off of it and bring it back to human, then you can recognize how much there is that is layered on to the top of the human that we call human society that is not to your best advantage. The society that you were raised in, um, you were born as a victim, but almost everyone is raised as a victim and then leave their lives as an adult as a victim. Another way of saying it is that the human mind has various parts of it, but one of them is the reptilian part of the brain. They call it the reptilian brain because when you dissect a human brain and the brain of an alligator, there's this section of the human brain that looks like the brain of an alligator. It's the same brain. Alligators do what alligators do, and humans do what we do precisely exactly the way that the alligators are doing it. Alligators know how to crawl. They know how to open and close their eyes. They know how to see. They know how to hear. They know how to wag their tail. They know how to crawl on all fours. They do everything that humans do, and they do it with the same part of the brain that the humans do. So what I'm getting at is that a whole lot of humans live their whole lives as alligators because that's all they need. They've got everything they need to live their whole lives, and they live their lives as an alligator, and they live their lives in a swamp. But we're human. We've got a different part of the brain. We've got this human part, this part that can wake up. So another way of saying it like that is that we are born as reptiles. We are born instinctually. We live our lives instinctually based upon the programming that we were born with. And some people never learn anything other than that which they already knew when they were born or when they were really little kids. So that means that we live our lives instinctually. We live our lives as if we were still children. We start off as victims as a child, and we live our whole lives as a victim. That means we're living our whole lives as a child. So, what we need to do is become human. That's that frontal cortex. What is the human part? The part that wakes up to see what's going on. They can see reality as it is. Where with the alligator's brain, everything we see is food. We don't see it as it is, we see it as food.
And so we're in that first kind of happiness, always running toward the oasis.
Always running towards the oasis, exactly. To where it's the human part of the brain that can actually sit down and say, this is really nice, I really like it, just as it is. So one part of our brain is always in anticipation, always trying to grab something, always trying to get something. And the other part of the brain is just being able to see what's going on. That's the human part, the part that we call wisdom. In fact, the Buddha makes sure to put the words wisdom and investigation together. Very, very strong connection between the two. The ability to see things clearly as they are, that's wisdom.
I found that investigative attitude really helpful when I was dealing with doubt, Frederic. You know, if I would sit down to meditate and be full of doubt, I could say to myself, well, I'm just going to investigate, see what happens. I'm not making any commitment. I'm not having to drop anything, or, well, I suppose I am in the moment, but I'm not. Yeah. There was a lot of times where I would feel like I was choosing between one way of life and another. That's way too heavy. So I would just say, okay, I'm just going to experiment for a moment, see what happens.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Great. Good. Well, do either one of you have anything to add to this little talk that we've had, or shall we finish it off now?
Well, I still want to talk about sharing the Dhamma.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, one question I have is if I wanted to do some more internet stuff to make the Dhamma available to people, if I wanted to see, one idea I had was I was going to take my practice pad out into town and do some drumming, and maybe take like a board with sort of free drum lessons. And I thought, well, I can do that, but if I'm feeling that the Dhamma is more valuable, or what if I could just approach people and ask them if they like being happy and start talking about the Dhamma? I don't know if that's a good idea or not.
I'm absolutely sure that you can put them together and combine them.
Okay.
Even to the point of, on one side, you can give a bit of drum lessons, and on the other side, you can have a little pamphlet or brochure or sign that says, drumming is fun, but I know how to be even happier than that.
Okay.
And let them ask you questions. So it
And-
looks like that it's all about drumming, but you're adding something else to it so that they can.
Cool.
And then take that practice pad out there. I can hear you now.
And
in fact, there is on YouTube. I think they call it flash, in the sense of a flash performance.
oh yeah, flash mob, like a dance thing.
Yeah, flash mob, exactly. Okay, and that one of the ones that I've seen is Bolero. In fact, it's just about my favorite. Why is that? Because this guy with a snare drum on a stand walks right out in the middle of this big place and starts doing that. You know how Bolero starts.
Yeah.
that drum solo. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking about. Is I'm thinking about that drummer. So instead of a practice pad, you might want to take a full snare drum out there, because I'm sure you've got one on the stand.
yeah, I do. Yeah. Now I tend to I've seen people out busking on drums. I think people are often, this is in my experience, people are often annoyed by solo drums. They want to have some kind of melody accompaniment.
Get a kazoo. I don't want you to play a Jew's harp, because you have to play that with your finger, but a kazoo, you can hold that in your mouth and play it all at the same time. I got one. I'll send you a kazoo.
I think I have one.
Harmonicas take talent.
Yeah. Kazoo is simple.
But a kazoo, yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so when I'm speaking with people, one of the questions that I have is, how much do I speak about the Buddha and the Dhamma and use those kind of terms, or do I speak about happiness and less exotic terms? Because I know that people can get turned off when you start talking about the Buddha. A lot of people think that it's religion. How do I deal with that?
Sell happiness.
Yeah.
Don't sell the Buddha.
Yeah.
At least not on the street. If you see the Buddha out there, they say kill him.
Yeah. And then just use.
But if you see happiness on the street, have some.
Right. and then use discernment to determine when it's appropriate to tell people where the teaching is coming from.
Actually, it may be useful for you to get business cards, so that you can, if anybody asks you any questions, you can hand them a card. And on that card, you can put a lot of different things, and we can actually experiment, since business cards are so easy to do nowadays. that you can experiment with what you're going to put on them.
Yeah, yeah. And there's so much that's possible with the internet now. You know, people are kind of doing virtual business cards by means of social media profiles, and that obviously says so much more than a card does. And so typically on the card you'll just have a web address, and that will then take you through to a lot more information. And I look at this is kind of one of the things that I'm thinking about is I see people on the internet kind of really marketing themselves as some kind of a guru or a mindfulness coach, or and it seems it seems like dangerous territory. How do I reach
For the
out?
business world, not so much, and for the people who are going to be answering for those things, not so much. But for Dhamma dudes, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
To be out there self-promoting.
Yeah.
As you notice, what I've been doing all along is very little self-promoting, that I would prefer others like you or whatnot do the promotions so that the students will come. There may be some necessary promotions, but I would say that the promotions, if should be done one-on-one, as opposed to in a group or in a crowd or busking.
Okay.
That's not the time to do promotions.
Okay.
And another way that you can do it is by not promoting yourself, but promoting the Dhamma itself.
Yeah.
Or like the way that I would do it, I would promote Wat Suan Mok, promote Achan Cha or Achan Bo, like that, to look at it as part of the organization. So you can think of it from that. But Danny the Guru, I would suggest stay away from that. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people will fall right into that hole.
Yeah. So it's how to navigate that when, if I'm going to do some internet stuff. I mean, social media is a minefield. I mean, there's all kinds of suffering present
Remember we've already just talked about it, so I'm sure you do. Remember the videos that Dr. Aiken was doing? Review those to see if you get some ideas about how you can talk to an audience. Because it doesn't ever mention Buddha at all.
No.
Okay.
Who is that? I missed the name.
The name of the name of the teacher who's doing the breathing stuff.
Yeah, what was it?
Dr. Atkins. I'll send it to you. I'll send you a link.
Okay, pleasure.
These are YouTube videos of a neuroscientist who is practicing the Dhamma, teaching the Dhamma, and he doesn't even know that he's doing it because he's doing everything out of neuroscience.
Oh yes, please send it to me.
Okay.
And so then what I'm proposing to give is happiness, and if I focus on that, then I'm all good.
Yes. So while you're out there, make sure that you're smiling. Smile at everybody who comes. Absolutely everybody. Even the old ladies. They're the ones you really...
the old ladies are easy to smile at. They'll smile back.
The young ones, right? Don't. If you smile at the young ladies, they'll give you the bird, or they'll say, "Not you, buddy. You're not. You're out here on the street. You think I'm going to date you?" Because they see it as a come on. Yeah. I understand. But it's been a lot of years. Actually, when I'm in Thailand, when I smile at the young women here, they always smile back. But I can bet in England that's not going to be the case.
No, they're scared. Scared to smile back. Because everybody wants what they got.
What, that argument that we were talking about a while ago?
Exactly that. Yeah. But I was thinking about this not long ago. You know, to be a beautiful young woman in the West is like carrying around a pot of gold,
Yes,
and everybody wants it.
except for one thing.
You can't put it
And
down.
that is that pot of gold that they carry around in great big gold letters. They have GOLD written on the pot.
Uh-huh.
The question is, and this is actually much more Muslim, is that why do women have to go around advertising the very thing that they want to not get stolen?
Validation.
Well, it's actually part of the society.
Mm.
Look at the number of companies that have put so much millions and millions of dollars into trying to get women to do what to be beautiful. Max Factor, Revlon, Gucci. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on and on and on. And so in Thailand, a lot of the women will go, let us say, much or most of their whole lives, and the only time they'll put on lipstick is when they go to the temple. I wonder where they got that from. That is so funny when I see Tam with lipstick on. Where's she? She's going to the temple. Thai women who can. But that's all. Just a little makeup. Just a little lipstick. To where with these girls that are walking around afraid to smile, before they went out on the street afraid to smile, they spent 30 minutes in front of the mirror putting on what, $5-10 worth of makeup on.
At least. And the hair and the clothes.
Wouldn't she be much happier if you started using that makeup to make herself look ordinary or ugly? Then she can go out and smile at the guys and not dangerous. Same girl.
Quite possibly. But that will be a long way from a possibility in her mind.
Well, that's one of the things that I've noticed about Western women who get into Buddhism, that it takes them a long time to give up makeup.
The narrative that they're not good enough is so strong. It's unbelievable. I think of my little 16-year-old sister who's grown up with social media, and she will post a photo of herself. 30 or 40 of her friends will say, "Oh, that's nice, I'll like that." She does this with her finger, and here's Beyonce Knowles, big pop star, $1 million dress. This is one shot selected out of probably 10,000, doctored on the computer. 6 million likes, same format. So the opportunity for comparison is probably irresistible. Well, I'm not sure about that.
Right, exactly. And we do that a lot. In fact, I haven't talked to Frederic about that at all, but eventually we will. And what we're talking about here is conceit.
Yeah.
And what we mean by conceit is that we go around comparing ourselves to other people on a regular basis. And women do it more than guys do it. Or let us say that guys do it within a certain circumstance. To where women, just their face is the circumstance. They're out there looking at each other.
And then the billboard.
They'll look at themselves and look at the girl beside her, and then they'll look at the billboard.
Yeah.
And then they'll get their mirror out and they'll look at their own face and they'll say, "Oh, I need this and I need that." Poor girl. And by the way, if there's any women who are listening to this, guys have got their own troubles.
Oh, for sure.
But we're talking about it in the sense of the fact that it's hard to get people to smile if they feel afraid.
Yeah. Well, and
I
think
they feel afraid when they feel vulnerable, like with the pretty women, but they have to be pretty. And then they have to feel afraid.
Yeah, and I think there's a fundamental difference between guys and girls in that girls are being sold all of this stuff to attempt to improve this. For us guys, it is what it is. No one's trying to sell us something to change this. So there's a kind of there's less that we can do about it.
Well, there are some companies that are trying.
Oh yeah,
NVIDIA and Gillette and Wilkinson Swords, many different companies shave and make the guy smell good. But ultimately, women are the ones who are supposed to be beautiful in our culture anyway. If a guy is beautiful, he's, let us say, at least the Christians are going to try to kill him. And so, right, these social norms are part of that silabbataparamasa. That's the kind of it's normally called the world. Jesus used it in that regard, in the sense of being in the world but not of the world. What did he mean by being of the world? That means that if you're a woman, you got to do like all of the other women. You got to be like them. You got to be in it. And the same thing is true for guys, that you got to, if you're going to be in the world, or if you're going to, you have to be of the world also, in the sense of that you've got to take on that set of mores, set of rules, rituals, all of that kind of stuff. And that what we're learning through the Dhamma is that all of that stuff is subject to suffering. It's painful. And not only is it painful, but it's expensive for those young women to buy all of that makeup. And then it's painful while they're putting it on. And then it's painful when they compare themselves to the other women. It's just, one pain trip after the other, and the only ones getting any benefit out of that is Max Factor and Revlon. The guys are not getting any benefit out of it, because what they fall in love with is Max Factor and Revlon. They can't even find and fall in love with the girl. They can't find her because she's got her face painted. They can't see the real girl. All they can see is the manufactured real girl that's based upon what society requires her to be.
And this is not all women, of course, but it is a social narrative.
It's certainly not true for all women. In fact, of the girlfriends that I've had since the 1970s, after they've heard this little talk from me, none of the women I know wear makeup around me at all.
Except Tam when she's going to the temple.
Except for Tam when she goes to the temple. But anyway, back to the street scene. I would go ahead and say, even if the young women don't smile, it's still okay to smile at them.
Sure it is.
Sure. So in that regards, go ahead and smile at everybody. Keep that smile machine in gear.
And that's good practice for me, regardless of whether anyone even approaches me.
Yep, that's what I'm getting at. And it is metta. In a way, it's also compassion. But by all means, it is karuna, which means the definition of it, by the way, Frederic, is called sympathetic joy. But normally within the Buddhism, the Buddhist religion, the sympathetic joy means that I feel miserable, so I should go to someone who feels happy and feel happy because they feel happy. The example would be that I am competing with a workmate for, let us say, our boss's position, who has been promoted. And so now I want to be the boss, and my workmate wants to be the boss, and he gets the job, and I don't. Therefore, I am, as a Dhamma dude, obligated to take him to lunch, to congratulate him. Why? Because the only other way to do it is to me to stay in my bad feelings, and now I've got a new boss who I hate. And he's going to figure that out really soon. But if I can get over it by taking my joy off of his and ride his coattails, I can be his best friend. I mean, after all, it was the two of us who were being considered for having that position anyway. So that's the position, or that's the story that they tell for Buddhist religion. But real Dhamma dudes have a different obligation. Our obligation is to not try to come out of our misery because somebody else has got a good fortune. Our job is to already be out of misery so that we are not going to need that. And in fact, we look at it from the other way around. While he and I were waiting to see who gets hired, he's going to be full of anxiety, trepidation. Do I get the job? He's wanting something he doesn't have. Me as a Dhamma dude, I've already got joy. So let me go cheer this guy up. Yeah. That's the way we look at it. That's sympathetic vibration or sympathetic joy, is let me find some joy that I can spread rather than going out there and looking for somebody else's joy I can steal.